They handed her the hardest piano piece to break her spirit, but they had no idea she was born to master it. The rain had just stopped when Mira arrived at the music academy. Her long black hair was damp from the walk, and her thin shawl clung to her shoulders. She stepped quietly through the tall wooden doors of the prestigious Shantiniketan Music Institute, one of the most respected places to learn classical music in the country. It was her first day. She clutched her folder with all her admission papers, transcripts, and certificates, her heart pounding inside her chest. She looked around at the grand hallway filled with shiny trophies, black and white portraits of famous musicians, and the echo of a grand piano being played in a distant room. Mira was 21, a bright young woman from a small town. Grown up surrounded by music, her mother had been a singer in her younger days, and her grandfather had taught her to play piano when she was just 6. Her family didn't have a lot of money, but they had something special: belief in her talent. Mira had played in local competitions, earned a few medals, and even taught piano to kids in her neighborhood. But this academy was something completely different. This was where real legends trained. And here she felt small. She entered the main office and handed her papers to the receptionist, who barely looked up. "Classroom B5, piano division," she said coldly, pointing down the long corridor. Mira smiled politely, whispered "thank you," and made her way to her class. When she entered the room, several other students were already seated. Some were chatting, others tuning their instruments. The room was large, with polished wooden floors and 3 grand pianos placed at the front. Framed sheet music hung on the walls, and a faint smell of polish and old paper filled the air. Everyone looked confident, dressed in stylish clothes, laughing loudly, tossing their hair and cracking jokes. Mira felt her stomach tighten. She took the last seat in the corner and opened her notebook silently, trying not to draw attention. The teacher walked in a few minutes later. Mr. Arvind Sharma was a middle-aged man with a sharp jawline, neatly trimmed beard, and an air of authority. He carried a clipboard and didn't smile as he entered. Behind him walked Ms. Kavita, younger teacher with a stern face and high heels that clicked loudly against the floor. "Welcome to advanced piano," Mr. Sharma said, his eyes sweeping across the room. "This is not a class for beginners. We expect discipline, skill, and commitment. If you cannot handle that, you're free to leave." A few students nodded confidently. One boy even smirked. "Let's start with introductions," Ms. Kavita said. "Name, previous training, and your favorite composer?" One by one, the students spoke. Arav Kapoor, trained in London; Beethoven; Sonia Mehta, trained at Delhi Music School, Chopin. The names were impressive, the confidence even more so. When it was Mira's turn, she stood up slowly. "Mira." "Joshi," she said softly. "Trained by my grandfather, and I've studied pieces by Mozart, Debussy, and some Indian ragas." A brief silence followed. A few students glanced at each other. Ms. Kavita raised an eyebrow. "You haven't trained at any formal academy?" "No, ma'am," Mira replied. "Only private practice." Mr. Sharma scribbled something on his clipboard without saying a word. "All right, let's begin with a short assessment," he said. "Each of you will play a short piece. Nothing too fancy. We just want to see your foundation." One by one, the students walked up to the piano and played. Some were technically strong, others showed flair. Mira listened carefully, admiring the skills but also noticing mistakes, missed beats, uneven pressure on the keys, rushed tempo. When it was her turn, she walked up to the piano quietly. She placed her fingers on the keys and took a deep breath. She began with a short segment from Clair de Lune by Debussy, one of her favorites. Her touch was soft, controlled, and deeply emotional. She let the notes float in the air like feathers. The room went unusually silent. But just 30 seconds in, Mr. Sharma interrupted. "Okay, that's enough," he said abruptly. "Thank you." Mira stopped, surprised. She looked up. "Was it bad? You play lightly," he said. "But you lack strength. You need more dynamics. We'll work on that." He didn't make eye contact. Mira returned to her seat without a word. Her heart sank. But she didn't argue. She wasn't here for praise. She was here to learn. In the days that followed, Mira kept her head down. The class was fast-paced and competitive. The other students showed off, tried to outdo each other, and often interrupted during practice, like to talk loudly about their international tutors, the concerts they had attended, the fancy music schools they were aiming for. Mira listened quietly and did her work. She arrived early, stayed late, and practiced alone in the spare rooms when others went for coffee. Breaks. She was never flashy, never loud, and never tried to draw attention. But her silence didn't go unnoticed. The teachers began to view her as distant, maybe even disinterested. One day after class, Ms. Cavita pulled her aside. "Mira," she said, "I noticed you don't participate much in discussions. You need to show more engagement." "Yes, ma'am," Mira replied politely. "I'm just trying to listen and learn more." "That's fine, but you have to show you care," she said. "Otherwise, we won't know how serious you are." Mira nodded. She didn't know what else to say. She thought that staying disciplined and focused was enough. She didn't know that silence could be mistaken for weakness. The following week, a student named Arov played a complex piece by Liszt. It was loud, fast, and full of technical tricks. He received a round of applause from the others, and even Mr. Sharma nodded approvingly. Mira thought the performance lacked feeling, but she kept her opinion to herself. When Mira played her piece the next day, a slow, emotional version of an old Hindustani melody adapted for piano, no one clapped. One student even yawned after class. Mr. Sharma made a comment loud enough for others to hear. "You can't get by just playing like it's bedtime music. You need power. Fire." The comment stung, but Mira said nothing. She knew she played with heart. She just didn't feel the need to bang the keys or impress the room. Slowly, a quiet distance grew between her and the rest of the class. Nobody was mean to her, but no one included her either. In group tasks, she was often assigned the easier sections. When it came to choosing performers for the monthly student showcase, her name was left out. Then one day an announcement came. The final recital of the semester would be open to guests, including visiting faculty, musicians, and critics. Each student had to perform one challenging solo piece. "This will be your biggest test," Ms. Cavita said. "We'll be selecting pieces for each of you by next week. Be prepared." Mira looked forward to it. This could be her chance to truly express herself. She had a long list of pieces she'd always dreamed of performing in public. She spent the whole weekend practicing. When the list was finally posted on the board, students crowded around it eagerly. Names and pieces were written clearly. Arav was assigned a flashy Chopin etude. Sonia got a Brahms intermezzo. Mira scanned the list and found her name. Her eyes widened. "Mira, Joshi, Rachmaninoff? Piano concerto? No." 3 excerpt, a murmur ran through the group. "She got that piece?" Someone whispered. "Isn't that one of the hardest ever?" Mira stood frozen, her heart thudding. She had studied the piece before, but never performed it. It was notoriously difficult, requiring extreme precision, stamina, and emotion. Even professional pianists often avoided it. Later that day, she went to Mr. Sharma. "Sir," she said, "gently may I ask why this piece for me?" He looked up. "'Cause you need a push," he said bluntly. "Let's see what you're really made of." "But sir, you've been playing it safe. We're not here to play lullabies. We want strength, not just softness." Mira nodded, holding back her feelings. She understood now. They didn't see her. They never really listened. They thought she was hiding because she was weak. But they were wrong. She wasn't hiding. She was waiting. She left the room with the music sheet in hand, her mind racing, but her spirit calm. If this was the challenge they had chosen for her, she would face it not for them, but for herself. That night, as the lights dimmed in the practice room and the echo of piano keys faded in the air, Mira sat quietly at the bench. She placed her fingers on the keys, closed her eyes, and began. Her journey had just begun. The day after the performance list was posted, Mira sat in the back corner of the library with the music sheet of Rachmaninoff's. Piano concerto? No. 3 spread out in front of her.
Oh.
The notes looked like waves crashing over each other, dense, complicated, heavy. Her eyes followed the black marks on the white paper, and though she recognized some sections, the sheer size and difficulty of the piece made her chest feel tight. But strangely, she also felt something else: excitement. Mira had always been drawn to music that demanded more than just technical skill. She believed music should speak, cry, laugh, and breathe. And Rachmaninoff's piece was exactly that. It wasn't just about speed or strength. It was about feeling, storytelling, and fire hidden within elegance. It was a storm and a whisper at the same time. She remembered hearing it years ago on an old radio, played by a Russian pianist in a grand hall, and it had stayed with her ever since. Now she had to play it. Not a small part of it, but a long, heavy section filled with impossible fingerings, leaps, chords, and tempo changes. It felt like climbing a mountain without shoes. She knew most students wouldn't have picked this piece for themselves. It wasn't just hard, it was exhausting. But she didn't complain. She didn't ask for another one. If this was what they wanted, she would show them what she could do. Quietly in the following days, Mira started waking up before sunrise. While the city was still dark and silent, she would set up a small keyboard at home and practice wearing her headphones, so as not to wake her parents. She only had 3 weeks until the recital. Every second mattered. After breakfast, she would leave early for the academy, reaching before anyone else. The guard at the main gate began recognizing her as the early girl. Some days, she practiced. In the hallway while waiting for the music rooms to open, inside the academy, she noticed how her classmates had started whispering about her. Some were curious, others confused. Why would they give her Rachmaninoff? One said. She can't even play loud enough, said another. Mira heard them, but she never responded. She had no time for gossip. She had work to do. During class, the teachers didn't offer her much help. Mr. Sharma gave her a copy of the score and said, "You figure it out. Come to me only if you're completely stuck." Miss Kavita didn't speak to her much at all. It was clear they expected her to struggle. Maybe they wanted to see her break under pressure, give up or fail. Mira didn't mind their silence. In fact, it pushed her harder. She borrowed old recordings from the academy library, watching famous pianists play the same piece on grainy videos. She paused, rewound, studied finger movements, listened to how they used silence between notes. She wasn't trying to copy them. She just wanted to understand how each pianist interpreted the music. She wasn't chasing perfection. She was chasing truth. She started practicing for 6 to 8 hours daily, breaking the piece into small sections. One day she would only focus on the right hand, another day on dynamics. She experimented with tempo, explored emotional balance, and even read about Rachmaninoff's life to feel closer to the music's spirit. She didn't just want to play the piece. She wanted to live inside it. One evening, while practicing in a quiet room, she noticed someone watching her through the glass window. It was Mr. D'Souza, the janitor who cleaned the music wing. Didn't say anything, just smiled and continued. His work the next day, he left a small flask of warm tea on the piano bench while she practiced. Mira smiled and whispered, "Thank you," though he had already walked away. Her fingers were beginning to swell. Blisters appeared on the tips, and her shoulders ached from hours of tension. Some nights her eyes burned from studying the sheet music too long. Her mother noticed and grew worried. "Mirabeta, are you overdoing it?" Evening. Mira held her mother's hand and said, "Just a few more days, Ma, then I'll rest. Promise." Her father didn't say much, but every morning he left a boiled egg and banana on her plate before she left his quiet way of showing support. At home, her younger brother stopped asking for the TV remote whenever she needed silence. Even her neighbors, who usually complained about piano sounds late at night, seemed to understand something was happening. Everyone could feel her focus. Back at the academy, no one asked her how it was going. Other students were busy polishing their own pieces, showing off during practice sessions, laughing loudly, clapping for each other. Mira practiced alone, often in the smallest room at the end of the hallway, where no one would disturb her. The piano there was slightly out of tune, the bench uneven, but it was her favorite room. In that corner, she was invisible, and she liked it that way. One afternoon, while she was playing a particularly emotional part of the piece, where the melody rises like a prayer, soft but desperate, someone opened the door. It was Ms. Cavada. She stood there for a few seconds, listening but said nothing. Then she left. Mira didn't stop playing. She didn't expect praise, and none came. The next few days passed quickly. The pressure grew heavier. Everyone was talking about the recital. Posters were printed. Guests were confirmed. Students prepared their speeches and outfits. Some even brought makeup kits to rehearsal. It had become more of a show than a recital. But Mira stayed out of it. She didn't care what people wore or who clapped the loudest. She cared only about the piano, the story inside the music, and the promise she had made to herself. Then, something unexpected happened. A day before the recital, Mr. Sharma made a surprise visit during her practice. He listened silently for a few minutes, arms crossed. Then he said, "You'll need more volume in the climax. Don't be afraid to hit the keys harder."
Yes.
"Sir," Mira replied. And he added with a hint of sarcasm, "Don't freeze when people start watching." "You're not used to that, are you?" Mira smiled politely but said nothing. She knew now he didn't believe she could do it. But that didn't bother her anymore. She wasn't doing this for his approval. That evening, she stayed at the academy, till the janitor gently knocked and said, "Beta, it's time to lock up." Mira stood, her fingers trembling, eyes heavy, but heart clear. She had done all she could. She had given her everything to the music. Now the rest was up to the keys. At home, she soaked her hands in warm water, massaged her shoulders, and lay down. Her mind was filled with the music. She could hear it in her dreams, soaring, dipping, crashing like a wave, and then falling silent. On the morning of the recital, she wore a simple white kurta with blue embroidery. No makeup, no jewelry, just a small black hair clip to hold her braid in place. Her mother hugged her tightly and kissed her forehead. "Play from your heart," she whispered. Her father dropped her at the academy, placing his hand gently on her shoulder without saying a word. That single touch meant everything. The auditorium was decorated with lights and flowers. A long red carpet led to the stage. Families, friends, and guests filled the seats. Mira sat backstage, holding her sheet music even though she didn't need it anymore. She had memorized every note. But she held it like a reminder of how far she had come as she waited for her turn. She heard the applause for the other performers. Sonia's Brahms piece got cheers. Arav played so loudly that the audience clapped before he even finished. Mira closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Finally, her name was called. Next, we present Mira Joshi, performing an excerpt from Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto, No. 3. There was a pause. Some people murmured in surprise. A few heads turned. Some eyebrows lifted. She walked to the piano slowly, hands steady, feet calm. The spotlight hit her softly. The room grew quiet. She sat down, placed her fingers gently on the keys, and waited a moment. Not for attention, not for drama, but for silence. The kind of silence that lets music breathe. Then she began. The first note rang out softly, like the sound of a single drop of water falling into a still lake. It was a gentle start, quiet and calm. Mira's fingers rested on the piano keys with complete control, moving slowly as if they were whispering a secret only the music could understand. The entire auditorium became silent, not just quiet, but completely still. It was as if everyone had stopped breathing for a second. The noise, the whispers, the distractions, everything faded away. Nobody had expected this, not from her. The quiet girl who sat in the back of the class, who never raised her voice, who never showed off. Most of the students didn't even know what her full name was. Some guests didn't recognize her at all. But now, they couldn't look away. Mira's hands moved like they were made of silk and steel at the same time. Every note had emotion. Some were soft and full of sadness, others strong like thunder. She didn't just play the piece. She lived. Inside it, her face didn't show fear or stress. Her eyes were half closed, lost in the music. It was clear she wasn't thinking about impressing anyone. She wasn't looking for praise or approval. She was simply telling a story through the piano, her story. In the beginning, the piece was slow and emotional. Her fingers moved gently, but with deep feeling, the music flowed like a quiet river. The audience could feel the emotion, some felt tears behind their eyes, and they didn't even know why. Then, slowly, the music started to grow louder. The rhythm picked up. The keys began to dance under her touch. It was like watching a bird spread its wings, rise into the air, and begin to fly. The difficult parts of the piece were known to everyone who understood classical piano. Many professional musicians feared this composition because of its impossible speed, the strength it required, and the emotional balance it demanded. But Mira somehow made it look easy. Her fingers flew over the keys, right hand playing lightning fast. Runs, left hand jumping octaves with perfect timing. Her back was straight, her face peaceful, her movement calm but full of power. It was like watching someone completely free. Backstage, students peeked through the curtain, their mouths slightly open. Some of them had never seen anyone play like that in real life. Arav, who had always shown off his talent, stood frozen. Sonia, who had once whispered that Mira was too soft for serious music, now stared with wide eyes. Even Miss Kavita, who had doubted Mira from the beginning, leaned forward in her chair, her eyebrows lifted, her lips slightly apart in disbelief. Mr. Sharma sat still in the front row. He didn't blink much. His usual strict expression had disappeared. Instead, he looked unsure. He had expected this performance to be a struggle, maybe even a failure. But what he was witnessing now was not just a student doing well, it was brilliance. Halfway through the performance, the music exploded into a powerful storm. It was fast, intense, and full of drama. Mira's arms moved quickly, yet with full control. Her fingers crossed over each other, sometimes playing in opposite directions. Her face still didn't change.
Now she was completely inside the music.
Not distracted by the audience, the lights, or the pressure. She had practiced for weeks in silence, in secret, with pain in her hands and doubt in her heart, but all of that was gone now. What remained was strength. A quiet kind of strength that didn't need to be loud. In one section, she played a long series of rapid notes without a single mistake. The audience was stunned. Some people leaned forward in their seats. One little girl in the front row clutched her mother's arm and whispered, "She's like magic." The mother didn't respond. She was too busy listening. As the piece moved toward its final part, the music became softer again, not weak, but emotional. Like someone remembering an old memory, one that makes you smile and cry at the same time. Mira slowed down, letting the piano breathe. Each note was placed with care, like a painter adding the last strokes to a masterpiece. The room was silent but not empty. It was filled with feeling, the kind of feeling that only true art can create. Then came the final few notes. They were quiet, gentle, like a heartbeat slowing down. And then silence. Mira lifted her hands from the keys and sat still for a moment. She didn't smile. Didn't look at the audience. She just lowered her hands to her lap and took a deep breath. Only then did she turn slightly and stand up. The room remained quiet for 2 seconds. Just 2 seconds, but it felt longer. And then, like a wave, the applause began. It started slowly, as if people were still processing what they had just heard. Then it grew louder, faster, until it filled the entire hall. People stood up. Some clapped hard, others simply held their hands together in silent respect. A few teachers looked at each other, speechless. Mira walked off the stage without bowing deeply or waving dramatically. She gave a small nod and exited quietly, just like she had entered. Backstage, no one said anything at first. Then one girl whispered, "That was unbelievable." Another student clapped softly. Mira smiled gently and said, "Thank you," then went to a quiet corner to sit. Later, in the green room, the students changed and chatted about their performances. Some of them approached her. RF came first, rubbing the back of his neck. "Hey," he said, "that was ... amazing. I didn't know you had that in you." "Thanks," Mira replied, her voice as calm as ever. Sonia followed. "Where did you learn to play like that?" "My grandfather," Mira said simply. Sonia looked embarrassed. "Well, he must be a genius." Miss Kavita appeared then. She looked at Mira for a long moment. Her expression had softened. "You surprised us," she said, her tone different from usual. "I didn't expect that level of ... maturity in your playing." Mira only nodded. "I practiced a lot." Clearly, Miss Kavita said, "Well done." No. When Mr. Sharma came by, he didn't say anything for a while. He just looked at Mira, then handed her a sheet of paper. It was a copy of the performance. Order for next month's inter-academy competition. Her name was on it, at the top. "You'll represent us," he said. Mira looked at the paper and nodded. "All right," Mr. Sharma hesitated for a second. Then he said, more softly than ever before, "You played like a professional today." Mira smiled slightly. "Thank you, sir." She didn't feel proud in a loud way. She didn't need to. What she had done wasn't just about proving others wrong. It was about doing justice to the music, honoring the trust her grandfather had put in her, and believing in herself even when no one else did. When she finally returned home that evening, her parents were waiting near the door. Her mother hugged her tightly, whispering, "We watched the recording on the Academy's page. You were beautiful." Her father simply placed his hand on her head and smiled. That was enough for Mira. She went to her room, sat at her small keyboard, and played a slow, gentle tune. Nothing complicated, just a song she used to play as a child. She closed her eyes and let the music carry her, not for an audience this time, not for teachers or awards, just for herself. In the coming days, news of her performance spread through the academy. Students she had never spoken to before began greeting her with smiles. Younger students asked her for advice. Some teachers mentioned her during class discussions. But Mira remained the same. She still arrived early, practiced alone, and sat in the back of the room. Fame didn't change her. People finally began to see who she really was, not just a quiet student, but a passionate artist who carried a world of music inside her. They didn't realize it before because she didn't shout or demand attention. But now her music had spoken for her, and it had spoken loud enough for the whole room to hear. The day after the recital, the music academy felt different. The corridors were the same, the classrooms were the same, and the old wooden piano benches still creaked in the same way. But the way people looked at Mira had changed completely. Before the performance, most students and even some teachers barely noticed her. Now, when she walked through the hallways, heads turned, and conversations paused. Some students smiled at her, others gave her small nods of respect. The younger ones looked at her with a kind of wonder, as if she had suddenly become a famous artist. Even the receptionist, who usually never lifted her head from the register, looked up at Mira and said with a small smile, "Good performance yesterday." Mira responded to all of them with the same calmness that was part of her nature, gave polite nods, smiled softly, and thanked those who spoke to her. But inside, she didn't feel proud in the usual way. She wasn't chasing attention or praise. What she felt was something deeper: peace, quiet satisfaction that she had done justice to her music and to herself. Her performance was still being talked about in whispers and excited tones. Students replayed the video on their phones. One group of students was discussing how she managed to play that incredibly difficult part in the middle of the piece without a single mistake. Another group argued about how she kept her hands so relaxed even during the fastest passages. Arav, who had once seen himself as the most talented student in class, now kept a polite distance. He wasn't rude, but he seemed unsure of how to talk to Mira now. It wasn't jealousy, it was something else. Maybe surprise. Sonia, on the other hand, began to sit closer to Mira in the common area and even asked her questions about finger techniques and warm-up exercises. Mira answered everything without hesitation. She didn't believe in holding knowledge back. She had once been the student sitting in the corner, and she knew how lonely that felt in the classroom. The teachers also acted differently. Mr. Sharma, who had barely looked at her before the recital, now addressed her by name and often asked her to play small sections during demonstrations. When other students struggled with a difficult passage, he sometimes said, "Mira, can you show them how it's done?" And she would. Not to show off, but to help. Ms. Cavita began inviting Mira to attend special workshops reserved for advanced students. She even asked her if she'd be willing to play a short solo during an upcoming teachers' conference. Mira agreed quietly, not because she wanted to impress more people, but because she wanted to keep sharing her love for music with those who were willing to listen. One afternoon, she was packing up after a long practice session. Mr. Sharma walked into the room. "You're still here?" he asked. Mayer smiled. "Just finished. I like practicing in the evening. It's quieter." He nodded and leaned against the doorframe. "I wanted to say something," he began. "When I assigned you Rachmaninoff, I didn't expect that."
Almira didn't respond.
She just waited. "I thought you would break under the pressure," he admitted. "You were so quiet, so
I didn't be invisible in class.
I assumed you weren't ready." "I was nervous too," Mira said simply, "but I wanted to try." Mr. Sharma looked thoughtful. "You didn't just try. You showed maturity, grace, and power. That kind of performance doesn't come from practice alone. It comes from deep feeling." Mira looked down at the piano. "Keys, I've been playing since I was 6. My grandfather taught me to feel the music, not just play it." "Taught you well," Mr. Sharma said. "We misjudged you. I apologize for that." Mira was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "It's okay. Maybe you just didn't know me yet." After that day, something shifted between her and the teachers. They no longer saw her as a student with potential, but as someone who had already achieved something remarkable. Her opinions started to matter. She was invited to join discussions, help choose pieces for student showcases, and even assist in correcting younger students' techniques. But Mira stayed grounded. She continued arriving early, practicing alone, and keeping her routine the same. She still wore simple clothes, still carried her old music notebook, still helped clean the piano keys after long sessions. She didn't change herself to match the attention she was receiving. She remained herself. Despite all the praise, Mira knew one truth very clearly. This was only the beginning. That one recital had opened a door, yes, but the journey ahead was still long. She still had so much to learn. There were hundreds of pieces she wanted to master, techniques to improve, emotions to explore through music. Her hunger for learning had not been satisfied by applause. In fact, it had only grown stronger. One day as she was leaving the academy, she saw the janitor, Mr. D'Souza, sweeping the corridor. She walked over to him and said, "Thank you for the tea that day." He looked up and smiled. "You noticed I knew you'd need it." "I did," she replied, laughing softly. "More than you know." He nodded. "You play like someone who listens more than she speaks." Mira looked at him with a bit of surprise. "What do you mean?" "Most people try to show how loud they can be," he said, tapping his broom gently on the floor. "But you showed us how powerful silence can be." Mira thought about his words all the way home. The following week, she was invited to perform. Again, this time at the Inter-Academy competition in another city. It was a big event, with participants from different music schools across the country. Mr. Sharma handed her the invitation letter. "I think you're ready," he said. "You've already surprised us once. Maybe it's time others saw what you can do too." Mira accepted the offer. She didn't feel scared. She felt ready. But this time, she wanted to do something different. Instead of choosing a Western classical piece, she selected an Indian raga adapted for piano. It was a bold choice. Most students were sticking to composers like Chopin and Mozart on list. But Mira wanted to bring a piece of her roots to the stage. She wanted the audience to hear something new, something beautiful and soulful. She spent the next few days composing and arranging the piece, blending traditional Indian melodies with piano harmonies. She experimented with tempo and tone, mixing classical style with her own touch. Every note she wrote felt like a part of her own story, her childhood. Her grandfather's lessons, the late-night practices, the rain on the roof of her small home. When she finally performed it at the competition, the audience sat frozen in their seats. They had never heard a performance like this before. It was traditional yet modern, emotional yet disciplined. She received a standing ovation and was awarded first prize, but what mattered most to her was when one of the senior judges came backstage and said, "You brought something fresh and honest to the piano." That's rare. Back at the academy, her teachers celebrated her win, but even then, Mira stayed the same. She spent the next morning teaching a younger student how to play scales correctly. She stayed after class to help tune a piano that had gone slightly out of key. She answered emails from new students asking for advice. One afternoon, as she practiced alone, Ms. Cavita walked into the room and placed a small envelope on the piano. "What's this?" Mira asked. "An invitation," Ms. Cavita replied. "A music school in Europe wants to offer you a scholarship." Mira opened it slowly. It was real, a full scholarship, the kind that could change her entire future. She stared at it for a long time. Her hands trembled slightly. She thought of her family, her home, her journey. She thought of all the days she had been ignored, underestimated, and left behind. And then she thought of the music. Always the music. She looked up and smiled. Think about it. She didn't decide right away. She wanted time. Not because she was afraid, but because she respected the journey. She knew that whatever path she chose next, it had to feel right not just for her career, but for her heart. That night, she sat by her window, holding her old music book. The pages were filled with notes, lyrics, and memories. Her grandfather's handwriting was still on the first page. She touched it gently and whispered, "Thank you, Dadu. You always believed in me even when no one else did." Outside, the wind blew softly, and the stars blinked in the quiet night sky. Mira closed her eyes and let the music inside her play once again, not on the piano, but in her soul. The envelope with the scholarship letter stayed on Mira's table for days. Every morning when she woke up, her eyes would go straight to it. Every night before sleeping, she would glance at it again. It felt like holding a door in her hands, a door that could take her to a world of new opportunities, new people, new music. A door that many people dream about, but few get to open. The scholarship was from a famous music conservatory in Europe. It was fully funded, covering everything's tuition, living expenses, travel, and even personal coaching by world-class pianists. They had seen the video of Mira's recital, followed her performance in the inter-academy competition, and were now offering her a chance to learn and grow in ways she had never imagined before. But because she wasn't happy, she was. It wasn't because she was afraid. She wasn't. The real reason was that Mira was thoughtful. She didn't make big decisions in a hurry. She liked to listen to her heart first. And right now, her heart was full of many things: gratitude, confusion, joy, fear, and a deep love for the life she had already built. At the academy, everyone had heard about the scholarship. Teachers congratulated her. Students looked at her with admiration. Some even treated her like a celebrity. One afternoon, while walking to the practice room, a little boy from the beginner's class ran up to her and said, "Didi, one day I want to play like you." She smiled and bent down to tie his loose shoelace. "You already have music in your heart. That's the first step," she said gently. Her teachers were proud. Mr. Sharma, who had once doubted her completely, now said in class, "Sometimes the best students are the quiet ones. They don't ask for attention, they earn it." Miss Cavita arranged a small farewell event for her, just in case she accepted the offer. The auditorium was decorated with simple flowers. It was no big show, just music and honest words. Mira performed a short piece she had composed herself, inspired by her journey. It was soft, full of emotion, and brought tears to more than one pair of eyes. After the performance, Ms. Cavita hugged her. "Wherever you go," she said, "carry your heart in your fingers. That's what makes your music different." Mira nodded, her eyes shining. But even with all this love and support, there was one place she still needed to visit before making her final decision: her home. She took a day off and returned to her small town. The streets were still the same. The tea stall at the corner still had that strong smell of ginger and cardamom. Her neighbors still waved from their balconies. And her house, simple, warm, full of memories, welcomed her like a familiar song. Her parents were waiting with open arms. Her mother had made all her favorite dishes, and her father had taken leave from work just to spend the day with her. They didn't talk much at first. They just sat together, drank tea, and let the silence speak for them. Later that evening, Mira went to her grandfather's old room. It was quiet, just like she remembered. The window was open, and the wind carried the sound of distant temple bells. She sat at the small wooden table where her grandfather had once written music notes and practiced with her for hours. His old harmonium was still there. She opened it, pressed a few keys, and the sound brought tears to her eyes. She remembered how he would sit beside her, guiding her fingers, correcting her posture, teaching her not just how to play, but how to feel. She spoke to him in her heart. "Dadu, I got the scholarship, the one we used to dream about. They want me to go to Europe, learn from great teachers, perform on big stages. Everyone says I should go, but I don't know. Is this the right time? Will I lose myself in that big world, or will I become more of who I already am?" She closed her eyes and waited. There was no voice, no clear answer. But somehow, she felt a kind of warmth in her chest, silent encouragement, a gentle push forward. The way he used to say, "Play the next note, Mira. Don't stop."
At night.
She sat on the roof of her house, looking up at the stars. The same stars she had watched when she was a little girl, dreaming of grand concert halls and shiny black pianos. Now, those dreams were close enough to touch. She took out her phone and wrote a short message to the conservatory. "Thank you for this beautiful opportunity. I accept the scholarship with gratitude and great joy. I look forward to beginning this new journey." The reply came within an hour. "Welcome, Mira. We are honored to have you." And just like that, the next chapter of her life began. The next few weeks passed quickly. There were documents to prepare, luggage to pack, goodbyes to say. The academy helped her with arrangements. Students gave her handwritten notes, wishing her luck. Some gave her small gifts, music bookmarks, finger warmers. For cold weather, even a lucky charm shaped like a piano key. Her parents hugged her every chance they got. Her mother tried to hide her tears, but Mira noticed. Her father silently placed an envelope with some extra money in her bag. "For emergencies," he said softly. On the day of her flight, she stood at the airport holding her passport and ticket, her heart full. She wasn't scared of the plane or the distance. She was thinking about the journey behind her, the quiet struggles, the long hours, the pain in her fingers, the sound of her grandfather's voice, and that one moment on stage, when the world finally heard her music. When she landed in Europe, the weather was cold. She wrapped her shawl tighter and stepped into a world full of unfamiliar faces and sounds. The streets were busy, the buildings tall, the language different, but the pianos, they felt just the same. Black and white keys, silent until touched, waiting for stories to be told. The conservatory was grand. Long hallways with wooden floors, walls lined with portraits of famous musicians, and rooms filled with the sound of practice. Mira was given her own space, a small but clean room with a piano and a desk. She spent her first few days exploring, attending classes, meeting students from all over the world. Some students were friendly, others distant. Some were surprised when she played, not expecting so much emotion from someone so quiet. But Mira didn't try to explain herself. She just played. Slowly, she started gaining respect. Her teachers noticed her dedication. One of them said, "You play like someone who has lived many lifetimes." She smiled and replied, "I just listen to the music. It tells me what to do." Months passed. Seasons changed. Mira performed at small concerts, participated in group sessions, composed new pieces. Her style grew, but her heart remained the same. She wrote letters to her family, sent recordings back home, and kept a small photo of her grandfather on her desk. One day, after performing at a winter concert, a senior pianist approached her and said, "You could go very far, Mira. You have something special." She nodded and said, "I don't want to go far. I just want to go deep." That was who she truly was, not someone chasing fame, but someone who wanted to explore the soul of music. Years later, when she returned to her home country for a performance tour, she visited her old academy. It hadn't changed much. The same wooden benches, the same echoes of piano practice in the halls. She walked into classroom B5 and smiled. It was the same room where it all began, where she had once been ignored, underestimated, and quietly given the hardest piece to play. Now, students recognized her instantly. They lined up for autographs, asked for selfies, and called her ma'am. But she didn't let it go to her head. She found a corner, sat at the same old piano, and began to play a soft melody. The room went silent, just like it had years ago. And once again, the music spoke for her. That day, as she left the academy, Mr. Sharma met her at the gate. His hair was grayer, his walk a little slower. He shook her hand and said, "I'm glad we gave you that difficult piece. You didn't just play it. You turned it into your path." She smiled. Sometimes a hard path is the best one. As she walked away, the sky was golden with evening light. Her journey had taken her far, but she had never forgotten where she came from. She remained the same Mira, quiet, focused, full of feeling. A student of music, always learning, always listening. And now, the world was finally listening to her.